if you drive a Cadillac, a Chevrolet, or a GMC truck or SUV. General Motors is recalling nearly 600,000 vehicles. It's because their V8 engines can fail without warning, increasing the risk of a crash.
These vehicles are death traps. Would you drive a car that could burst into flames at any moment, or one where the engine might suddenly fail on the highway, leaving you stranded, or worse? Millions of Americans are doing exactly that right now, and they don't even know it. GM's latest engine crisis has turned everyday vehicles into potential death traps, and the company has been working overtime to keep it quiet. The truth is more terrifying than most car owners realize, and it might be parked in your garage right now. But here's what most people don't realize. This problem goes far beyond what GM is admitting. Internal documents suggest the company has known about these catastrophic engine failures for years, and the fix they're offering might not solve the real issue. And GM isn't alone. This crisis touches multiple manufacturers and affects millions more vehicles than anyone is talking about. What's truly shocking is how these companies have orchestrated a massive campaign to downplay these issues while knowingly allowing unsafe vehicles to remain on the road. By the end of this video, you'll never look at your car the same way again. Today we're asking one critical question. Just how dangerous are the vehicles sitting in your driveway right now? And what is being hidden from you about their safety? When Jim Peterson bought his 2023 Chevrolet Silverado, he was excited about the powerful new engine and advanced technology. 3 months later, that same engine suddenly seized while he was driving 70 miles per hour on Interstate 75 near Atlanta. There was no warning, Peterson told reporters. 1 minute I'm driving, the next my truck is dead in the middle of the highway with cars swerving around me. Peterson was lucky. He managed to coast to the shoulder without causing an accident. Others haven't been so fortunate. Mark Johnson wasn't as lucky. In March 2025, his 2024 GMC Sierra experienced complete engine failure on a busy Chicago expressway. Unable to maintain speed or steer effectively, his truck was struck from behind by a semi-truck. Johnson spent 6 weeks in the hospital with multiple broken bones and a traumatic brain injury. The doctors say, "I'll never be the same," Johnson said from his rehabilitation center, all because GM couldn't be bothered to build a reliable engine. Since early 2024, GM has faced mounting reports of catastrophic engine failures across multiple vehicle lines equipped with their 5.3-liter and 6.2-liter V8 engines. These aren't minor problems. They're complete engine failures that happen without warning, often at highway speeds, creating dangerous situations for drivers and everyone around them. The issue appears to stem from GM's dynamic fuel management system, which was supposed to improve fuel economy by deactivating cylinders when not needed. But according to multiple automotive engineers who've analyzed the failed engines, a design flaw can cause premature wear to lifters and camshafts, resulting in complete engine failure with little to no warning. Dr. Emily Zhao, a mechanical engineering professor at Michigan State University who specializes in powertrain systems, explains the technical issue. The dynamic fuel management system requires extremely precise machining and oil flow. Even minor manufacturing variations can lead to inadequate lubrication of the lifters. Once a lifter begins to fail, it can quickly damage the camshaft, causing cascading failures throughout the valve train. The most concerning aspect is how quickly this happens, often giving drivers no time to react or safely pull over. In January 2025, after nearly a year of customer complaints, GM issued a limited recall for 127,000 vehicles. But industry insiders suggest the problem is far more widespread than GM is acknowledging. Internal GM documents obtained by automotive watchdog groups indicate that failure rates for these engines might be 10 times higher than the company has publicly admitted. The recall covers certain 2023 to 2024 Chevrolet Silverado, GMC Sierra, Cadillac Escalade, Chevrolet Tahoe, and GMC Yukon models, but only those built during specific production periods. This limited scope excludes hundreds of thousands of vehicles with essentially identical engines. Ryan Marshall, who owns a 2023 Chevrolet Suburban that experienced engine failure but wasn't covered by the recall, expresses the frustration many owners feel. GM told me my build date was 2 weeks outside their recall window, so I had to pay $8,700 for a new engine. How does that make any sense? It's the exact same engine with the exact same failure. What's particularly disturbing is that GM appears to have known about these potential failures long before the recall was issued. According to former GM engineer Thomas Reynolds, the company had data showing unusual wear patterns in these components during durability testing as early as 2022, but they pushed forward with production anyway, betting that most failures would happen outside the warranty period. Reynolds, who left GM in late 2023, claims he was part of a team that raised concerns about the DFM system's long-term reliability. We recommended additional design changes that would have improved durability, but management rejected them due to cost and production timeline concerns. They calculated that the warranty cost would be less than the cost of fixing the design. For victims like Sarah Winters, GM's response has been inadequate. Her 2023 GMC Sierra experienced a complete engine failure while she was driving her children to school. The sudden loss of power caused her to be rear-ended by another vehicle. GM offered to replace the engine but refused to cover the other damage to my truck or any medical expenses. Winters said, "They told me the accident wasn't their responsibility, even though their engine is what failed." The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration opened an investigation in March 2025, but critics say it's moving too slowly. Meanwhile, more engines are failing every day, putting more drivers at risk. According to NHTSA data, there have been at least 37 crashes linked to these sudden engine failures, resulting in 12 injuries and 1 fatality. But GM isn't the only manufacturer with serious engine problems. Ford's 2.7-liter EcoBoost V6 engines are experiencing premature failure due to an issue with the timing chain, which can snap without warning, causing catastrophic engine damage. Unlike GM's problem, which typically occurs at higher mileages, these Ford engines are failing with as little as 30,000 miles on the odometer. Jason Martinez, a Ford F-150 owner from Texas, described his experience. "I was driving on a rural highway when I heard a loud bang, and suddenly my truck had no power. I had it towed to the dealer, and they told me the timing chain had broken and destroyed the engine. My truck only had 42,000 miles on it, and Ford wanted $12,000 for a new engine because they said it wasn't covered under warranty." Ford issued a service bulletin in February 2025, but not a full recall, leaving many owners to foot the bill for repairs that can cost upwards of $8,000. The company has extended the warranty on some vehicles, but maintains that the issue isn't a safety concern, a claim that accidents linked to these failures seem to contradict. Ford dealer technician James Wilson, speaking anonymously to protect his job, says the problem is far more common than Ford admits. "In our dealership alone, we see at least 3 or 4 of these engines per week with timing chain failures. The worst part is that Ford knows exactly what's causing it. The chain tensioner design is inadequate, and the oil passages that lubricate the chain are too small and prone to clogging. But instead of fixing the actual problem, they're just replacing failed engines with ones that have the same design flaws." Meanwhile, Stellantis, formerly Fiat Chrysler, is facing its own engine crisis with the 3.6-liter Pentastar Fe, 6 found in popular models like the Jeep Grand Cherokee and Dodge Durango. A flaw in the engine's cooling system can lead to overheating and head gasket failure, which in some cases has resulted in engine fires. Despite growing complaints, Stellantis has only issued a technical service bulletin, not a recall. Lisa Hernandez, a 2023 Jeep Grand Cherokee owner from Florida, experienced this firsthand. I was driving on the highway when smoke started pouring from under the hood. I barely had time to pull over before flames appeared. The fire department said if I'd been stuck in traffic, the situation could have been much worse. Hernandez's Jeep had only 28,000 miles and was just outside the basic warranty period. Stellantis initially refused to cover the repairs, only relenting after she hired an attorney. According to automotive cooling system specialist Dr. Robert Chen, the Pentastar's design places too much stress on the head gaskets. They've designed an engine that runs very hot to improve efficiency, but the cooling system doesn't have enough capacity to handle that heat in all driving conditions. Add in the fact that the head gaskets are relatively thin to save weight, and you have a recipe for failure, especially in hot climates or under heavy loads. The issues extend to luxury brands as well. BMW's popular B58 inline-six engine, used in everything from the 3 Series to the Toyota Supra, has been experiencing premature failure of the high-pressure fuel pump, leaving drivers stranded without warning. BMW has acknowledged the issue but characterizes it as a customer satisfaction problem rather than a safety concern. Emma Thompson, who owns a 2023 BMW X5, describes the terrifying experience. I was merging onto the freeway when my car suddenly lost all power. No warning lights, no gradual loss of power, just nothing when I pressed the gas. I was nearly hit by a truck before I could coast to the shoulder. BMW replaced the fuel pump under warranty, but offered no compensation for the towing or her traumatic experience. What ties all these issues together is the reluctance of manufacturers to issue full recalls. Instead, they're relying on technical service bulletins that put the burden on consumers to identify the problem and seek repairs. This approach saves the companies millions in recall costs, but leaves drivers vulnerable. Consumer advocacy groups have been pressing for more aggressive action. These aren't just reliability issues, they're safety issues, says Robert Hamilton of the Consumer Auto Safety Alliance. When an engine fails without warning at highway speeds, lives are at risk. Manufacturers need to stop hiding behind technical jargon and take responsibility. Hamilton points out that this problem has been growing worse in recent years. We've seen a 37% increase in reports of catastrophic engine failures since 2020. Manufacturers are pushing new technologies into production without adequate testing, all in the name of meeting fuel economy standards or marketing new features. The result is that consumers are essentially beta testing these technologies on public roads, often with dangerous consequences. The financial implications for the affected companies are significant. Industry analysts estimate that a full recall of all potentially affected GM vehicles could cost the company upwards of $2 billion. For Ford and Stellantis, the figures would be somewhat lower, but still in the hundreds of millions. These costs likely explain the company's reluctance to expand their recalls. Financial analyst Maria Rodriguez explains the calculations companies make. From a purely financial perspective, manufacturers often determine it's cheaper to handle these issues piecemeal through warranty claims and the occasional lawsuit settlement than to conduct full recalls. They set aside warranty reserves based on projected failure rates, and as long as actual failures don't exceed those projections by too much, it's business as usual. The human cost doesn't factor into these equations, but the human cost is potentially much higher. The father of Jessica Martinez, the 19-year-old who lost her life when her Chevrolet Tahoe's engine failed on a rural highway in Texas, has become an outspoken critic of GM's handling of the crisis. They knew these engines could fail without warning, Michael Martinez says. They gambled with people's lives to save money, and my daughter paid the ultimate price. Martinez has started a foundation in his daughter's name to advocate for stricter automotive safety regulations. Jessica's law would require manufacturers to recall vehicles whenever a design flaw could lead to a loss of power or control, regardless of the failure rate. No more calculating how many lives lost is acceptable compared to recall costs. For consumers, the situation creates a difficult dilemma. Many are driving potentially dangerous vehicles without knowing it. Unless you follow automotive news closely, you might not be aware that your car or truck could be at risk. And even if you are aware, getting repairs can be challenging. Dealership service departments are overwhelmed, with some reporting wait times of 3 months or more for affected engines. Some owners have turned to class action lawsuits as a remedy. As of June 2025, there are 5 major class actions pending against GM, 3 against Ford, and 2 against Stellantis. These lawsuits allege that the manufacturers knowingly sold defective vehicles and failed to properly address the safety risks. Attorney Catherine Murphy, who represents plaintiffs in one of the GM class actions, says the evidence is damning. We have internal communications showing that GM engineers identified these problems during development but were overruled by management. This wasn't a case of an unforeseen issue. They knew the engines would fail at higher rates than normal, but chose to proceed anyway. The crisis has also sparked debate about the rush to implement new technologies. Both GM's dynamic fuel management and Ford's EcoBoost systems were developed to meet increasingly stringent fuel economy standards. Critics argue that the pressure to improve efficiency led manufacturers to push these technologies into production before they were fully proven. We're seeing the consequences of regulatory pressure colliding with corporate cost-cutting, says automotive industry analyst David Chen. Companies are forced to improve fuel economy while maintaining profitability, and sometimes reliability and safety get sacrificed in that equation. What makes this situation truly alarming is that the problems appear to be getting worse, not better. Data from automotive diagnostic centers shows that failure rates for the affected engines are increasing as vehicles accumulate more mileage. For GM's V8 engines, the failure rate jumps dramatically after 60,000 miles, still well within what most consumers would consider the normal lifespan of a modern engine. Independent testing lab Car Test analyzed 50 failed GM engines and found a disturbing pattern. Dr. Laura Phillips, who led the analysis, reports, in 94% of the failed engines we examined, the lifter failure could be traced to a specific manufacturing tolerance issue that GM has known about since at least early 2023. The replacement parts they're using in the recall have the same fundamental design, just with slightly different materials. Our analysis suggests these fixed engines will start failing again after another 30,000 to 50,000 miles. And here's where it gets even more concerning. The fixes being offered by manufacturers may not actually solve the underlying problems. According to independent automotive engineers who have examined the updated parts, GM's replacement lifters use essentially the same design as the originals, just with slightly different materials. They're treating the symptom, not the cause, says independent engineer Robert Williams. I wouldn't be surprised if these fixed engines start failing again in another 50,000 miles. Williams points to a fundamental design issue. The DFM system requires lifters to engage and disengage thousands of times per minute in some driving conditions. No mechanical component can withstand that kind of cycling indefinitely. It's like bending a paperclip back and forth. Eventually it will break, no matter how good the metal is. For Ford's EcoBoost engines, the updated timing chains appear to be more robust, but the underlying issue of excessive chain wear due to oil flow problems hasn't been addressed. And Stellantis' solution for the Pentastar cooling issues involves a software update to change the engine's operating temperature, a band-aid approach that some experts believe could lead to other problems down the road. Mechanical engineer Trevor Stevens explains why these fixes are inadequate. Ford's timing chain problem is fundamentally an oil delivery issue. The oil passages that lubricate the chain are too small and prone to clogging with normal engine deposits. The updated chain might be stronger, but it's still not getting proper lubrication. As for Stellantis, lowering the operating temperature through software might reduce head gasket failures, but it also reduces efficiency and increases carbon buildup. They're just trading one problem for another. The most disturbing revelation comes from whistleblowers within the industry. A former quality control manager at a major GM supplier, speaking on condition of anonymity, claims that the company was aware of abnormal wear patterns in pre-production testing, but chose to move forward with the design anyway. There was enormous pressure to meet the launch date, the source said. Concerns about long-term durability were literally pushed aside in meetings. The attitude was, we'll deal with that problem when it happens, not now. The whistleblower provided internal test reports showing accelerated wear on lifters after the equivalent of just 40,000 miles of driving. The engineers recommended a redesign, but management overruled them. The decision was purely financial. A redesign would have delayed production by at least 6 months and cost millions. They calculated that the warranty claims would cost less than the delay. Similarly, a former Ford engineer claims that early testing of the EcoBoost timing chain showed potential issues, but the company calculated that most failures would occur outside the warranty period. It was a cold calculation, the engineer said. They weighed the cost of redesigning the system against the projected warranty claims and decided it was cheaper to handle the failures as they occurred. These claims, if true, paint a disturbing picture of an industry willing to gamble with consumer safety for financial gain. And the stakes couldn't be higher. A catastrophic engine failure at highway speed can lead to a sudden loss of power steering and reduced braking ability, potentially causing the driver to lose control of the vehicle. In heavy traffic, the results can be deadly. Vehicle safety expert Dr. Marcus Thornton explains why engine failures are so dangerous. Modern vehicles depend on engine power for many safety systems. When an engine fails suddenly, power steering becomes extremely difficult to operate. Brake assist is reduced, and even safety systems like electronic stability control may not function properly. If this happens at highway speed or in a dangerous driving situation like navigating a curve or changing lanes, the driver may not be able to maintain control of the vehicle. The crisis has sparked calls for regulatory reform. Consumer advocates argue that NHTSA needs more authority to compel recalls and levy meaningful penalties against manufacturers who delay addressing safety issues. Current maximum fines are often just a fraction of what companies save by delaying or limiting recalls. Former NHTSA Administrator Caroline Johnson points to the agency's limited resources. NHTSA has roughly 600 employees overseeing an industry that sells 17 million vehicles per year in the U.S. alone. They simply don't have the staff or budget to properly investigate every potential safety issue. This allows manufacturers to downplay problems and delay action, knowing that thorough investigation may take years. Meanwhile, millions of Americans continue to drive vehicles that could fail without warning at any moment. The affected models are some of the most popular on American roads: the Chevrolet Silverado, Ford F-150, Jeep Grand Cherokee, and others. Together, they represent more than 5 million vehicles currently in use. Vehicle data analyst Tyler Rodriguez puts this in perspective. Based on current failure rates and the number of affected vehicles still on the road, we're projecting that approximately 27,000 more engines will fail catastrophically in the next 12 months. That's 74 failures per day, any one of which could lead to a serious accident. But here's the most shocking part of this story. The cover-up extends beyond the manufacturers themselves. Internal communications from major dealership groups reveal instructions to service advisors about how to handle customer complaints related to these engine issues. One memo from a large GM dealership chain explicitly tells staff to avoid using terms like known issue or design flaw when speaking with customers, and to emphasize that these are isolated incidents rather than pattern failures failures. The memo continues. If a customer mentions reading about similar issues online, suggests that internet forums tend to concentrate negative experiences and aren't representative of overall vehicle reliability. Remind them that people rarely post when things are working normally. Another document from a Ford dealership group instructs service writers to characterize timing chain failures as likely due to customer maintenance habits, even when the vehicle's maintenance records show perfect adherence to the recommended schedule. A former service advisor at a large Chevrolet dealership confirms these practices. We were trained to deflect and minimize. If a customer came in with engine problems, we had a script to follow that basically put the blame on them. Their driving habits, maintenance history, even the gas they used. Anything to make it seem like their problem was unique and not a known issue. These communications suggest a coordinated effort to minimize the public's perception of the problem and deflect responsibility away from the manufacturers. By blaming individual vehicle maintenance or unusual driving conditions, dealers help manufacturers avoid the financial impact of widespread recalls. Even more disturbing are indications that dealership technicians are being instructed to reset warning systems without fully addressing underlying issues. Multiple technicians, speaking anonymously for fear of losing their jobs, describe being told to clear fault codes and return vehicles to customers with minimal inspection when certain engine-related warnings appear. We know these are precursors to bigger failures, one Ford technician said, but management doesn't want us to replace parts until something actually breaks. A GM technician shares a similar experience. I've seen lifters with clear signs of excessive wear, but unless they've completely failed, we're told to reassemble the engine and send the customer on their way. It's like seeing a crack in an airplane part and saying, oh well, it hasn't broken completely yet, so it must be fine. The result is a perfect storm of corporate negligence. Manufacturers push flawed designs into production knowing they'll likely fail after the warranty period. When problems emerge sooner than expected, they issue limited recalls or technical service bulletins rather than addressing the full scope of affected vehicles. And dealerships, caught between manufacturer pressure and customer expectations, often provide band-aid solutions rather than proper repairs. All of this leaves consumers in a vulnerable position. Even those who do everything right, who maintain their vehicles perfectly and respond promptly to recall notices, may find themselves with a vehicle that fails catastrophically without warning. And when that happens, they often face an uphill battle to get manufacturers to take responsibility. Consumer attorney Jennifer Liu, who specializes in automotive cases, says manufacturers have all the advantages. These companies have teams of lawyers and vast resources to fight claims. The average consumer doesn't stand a chance unless they have documentation of every oil change, every service visit, and ideally video evidence of the failure itself. Even then, manufacturers will argue that the failure wasn't the cause of any accident or injury, it was the driver's response to the failure. This crisis raises fundamental questions about the automotive industry's commitment to safety and the effectiveness of our regulatory system. If companies can knowingly sell defective vehicles and face only minimal consequences, what incentive do they have to prioritize safety over profit? Safety advocate Michael Torres puts it bluntly: until executives face personal liability for these decisions, nothing will change. When the worst consequence is a fine that amounts to a rounding error on the corporate balance sheet, endangering customers becomes just another business calculation. Remember those questions we asked at the beginning? Would you drive a car that could burst into flames at any moment, or one where the engine might suddenly fail on the highway? The uncomfortable truth is that millions of Americans are doing exactly that right now. And despite mounting evidence and increasing pressure from safety advocates, manufacturers continue to downplay the risks and limit their responses. So before you get behind the wheel of your car tomorrow, take a moment to check if it's on the list of affected models, because the vehicle you trust to carry you and your loved ones safely might actually be a death trap waiting to happen. And the companies that built it might be more concerned with their bottom line than with your safety. The choice you make about what to drive has never been more important. Your life might literally depend on it.